My name is David Daniel Ball, and these are the headlines for Saturday, the 14th of March, 2009. Ship leaking oil in Brisbane, Bligh's fault? Fatal unit fire under suspicion. Customs investigates possible Sydney airport cancer cluster. Friends say Peter Garrett is a better musician than politician. Teen allegedly found with 94 ecstasy pills remains behind bars. Rudd has no idea how to spend surplus. You spend it. ANZ denies sending 500 jobs to India. Men cleared after brutal brawl with police. Stoner criticizes overseas clothing while wearing an Italian suit. Garrett blocks development near New South Wales Park. And in comments, risk of disease rising due to immunisation slackness. Parents who don't get their children immunised are putting us all in peril, according to Alan Jones. Change. Who to believe, February 5th Obama or March 12th Obama? And you'll have to click on the links to see what that is about. Illumination of a nation. This year's Hour of Power, or Earth Hour, as some call it, fast approaches. 8:30 p.m. local time, wherever you live on planet Earth, Saturday the 28th of March, 2009. Those not living on planet Earth are presumably excused. Earth Hour losers at the age crank up the lightless excitement. Grand Prix organizers in AFL said they supported Earth Hour and planned to participate, but were unable to say how. As she was screeching from Andrew Bolt, James Jeffrey speaks too soon. Catherine Devaney's column in last week's The Age, which marked International Women's Day by describing her tampons as vagina bullets, may be her last contribution to Pravda on the Yarra. Save the planet, hurt the people. What violence couldn't be excused to save the planet? People are being urged to break into shops, disable four-wheel drives, and throw pies at people by an extreme environmental group being promoted by the New South Wales Greens. And I'll ask again, what is it with the left and violence? An update, speaking of tribalism and violence and increasing barbarity, at least 2 people were arrested in a bloody confrontation between supporters at last night's NAB Cup final at Docklands. One police officer who asked not to be named said it was the worst footy brawl he had seen. It was out of the ordinary. Every single unit in the ground got called, and I don't ever remember that happening before, he said. The video is an insight into a culture that's sick. Then again, maybe they were just trying to save the planet. Rudd will help those he puts out of work. The Australian is muscling up. Mr. Rudd has abandoned a proud tradition of reform, pattern bargaining by stealth, increased union rights of entry, and access to non-union workers' records of compulsory union bargaining will cost jobs. Asked this week whether he could guarantee that no jobs would be lost because of his IR changes, Mr. Rudd guaranteed that Australians will not have redundancy payments stripped away from them. It's little comfort for Australian workers. Guaranteeing to look after people you'll help out of work is a measure of this government's ideological madness. Al Gore must be a woman. The Guardian's Suzanne Goldenberg, who can't report on an international conference of distinguished warming skeptics without spitting, discovers another reason to ignore their facts. It'd be easy to dismiss this gathering as a pity party for people on the fringes of modern thought. The 600 attendees by the organizers count are almost entirely white males, and many, if not most, are past retirement age. Only 2 women and 1 African-American man figure on the program of more than 70 speakers. Sounds bad, so what damning conclusions on warming could Goldenberg draw from this gathering of the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the body doing most to push her apocalyptic faith? Carrion feasts, Obama fans look away. Not content with picking tax dodgers, sleazes, influence sellers, and anti-Israeli appeasers of terrorists, Barack Obama adds to his team Adolfo Carrion, the man who is President Obama's newly minted urban czar, pocketed thousands of dollars in a campaign cash from city developers whose projects he'd approved are funded with taxpayers' money, a Daily News probe found. Bronx Borough President Adolfo Carrion often received contributions just before or after he sponsored money for projects or approved important zoning changes, records show. Never mind, says Obama, just pay some of it back and she'll be sweet. The White House told urban czar Adolfo Carrion on Wednesday to pay the architect who did work on his Bronx home more than 2 years ago. The Daily News reported that Carrion had the architect draw up renovations in early 2007. That work came as Carrion's office was reviewing the architect's plan for a housing project. Carrion still hasn't paid for the work, raising questions about whether it was a freebie done to win approval of the project. It is illegal for city officials to accept gifts from entities they know are doing business or are about to do business with the city. Had George Bush surrounded himself with such people, how full would the papers be of his team of crooks? 2 legs good, 4 legs Pacific Brands. Labour and the unions vilify, harass and threaten Pacific Brands when it tries to save its remaining 5,000 Australian jobs by shifting production to China. But what's obscene for a company is okay for some comrades. Premier Nathan Rees has defied his own party and defended the outsourcing of 10,000 New South Wales jobs overseas. The Premier was reacting to revelations in the Daily Telegraph that almost all police uniforms, ambulance uniforms, 626 train carriages and nurses' outfits were being made in China. And an update. Who best deserves monstering by Labour and the ACTU? A Premier who has not created wealth or jobs, or a boss like Pacific Brands, Sue Morfitt? Married with 2 children by her mid-20s, she went into family bakery business after her father died, wholesaling Bird's Country Mill bread mix. She has written a cookbook that sold 75,000 copies, owned a milk bar, and built a plum pudding business with $1 million turnover, all before moving to Pacific Brands in her mid-30s after her 3rd child reached school age. Improper, Bryce exposed by her own PR. Kevin Rudd must have known it was a gross breach of protocol to use the Governor-General to lobby African nations for his controversial bid for a UN Security Council seat. That's why he didn't mention this in a press release to announce Quentin Bryce was visiting Africa. Bryce herself must have known her lobbying was in Greece broach with the duty to keep out of politics, which is why she didn't mention it in the highly selective and incomplete itinerary of her trip that she published. But her media secretary, apparently less clued in to a Governor-General's duty to be impartial and apolitical, gives the game away to the ABC, which itself took months to realize Bryce had in fact breached the conventions of her office. Now an email from the Governor-General's office confirms the principal reason behind her trip was to lobby on the Australian government's behalf. ABC Radio's Sunday Profiling has been requesting an interview with the Governor-General for 6 months, and last month those requests came to fruition. The Governor-General's media secretary wrote an email to the program proposing the African trip would be a good subject for an interview planned down for this week. Can I suggest that the interview focus on that trip, which is all about Australia's bid for a seat on the Security Council? It's a tougher peg and will provide a bit more meat, the email read. The secretive arrangements for this trip strike me as furtive and even underhand, and the lobbying as an unprincipled use of the Governor-General's position. This, and the Liberals' opposition to Bryce's political lobbying, make it beyond question that Bryce either give up the trip or her office. She is heading rapidly for a constitutional crisis driven not by any issue of principle, but by her ego alone. Jobs for dangerously green mates? What a job to give a deeply green former water minister whose refusal to build a new dam or find alternative supplies has left Melbourne dangerously close to running out of water. A trust has been set up to help scientists influence government policies about water and the environment. Federal Water Minister Penny Wong announced $1 million in government funding for the trust. Trust Chairman John Thwaites, a former Victorian Deputy Premier, said the new body would bring together young scientists and policymakers. This isn't just giving a green mate a taxpayer-funded job, it's rewarding a catastrophic failure. Charles warns against his own gases. Another echo preacher warns the world against gases of the kind he just blew out of the back of his private plane. Prince Charles, 60, and Camilla, 61, were on a 10-day three-nation tour taking in Chile, Brazil, and Ecuador's Galapagos Islands. The research inspiration for Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, meant to draw attention to the challenges posed by climate change. Be not afraid. Cardinal Pell is right. The only argument was whether he was right to say it, or whether such double standards are justified. The West has become scared to criticize Islam and accept death threats by Muslim extremists as normal, Cardinal George Pell has suggested in a speech in England. Chaos, yet another Obama pick quits. Barack Obama loses yet another member of his team and what's going from farce to worse. Democratic sources say that H. Rogen Cohen, a partner in the New York law firm Sullivan and Cromwell, LLP, and the leading candidate for Deputy Treasury Secretary, has withdrawn from consideration. It's the third withdrawal of a top Treasury Department staff pick in less than a week. The extraordinary bungling in picking a team only underlines the fact that Obama has never run anything in his life but a campaign and is now floundering in office. If white nurses aren't safe, what hope the children? Some Aboriginal communities are so dysfunctional that white workers are not safe.